Budget 2010 brought to you by Harith Fund Managers.
Let's kick off and Dennis squarely into your court. We had 13 budgets under Trevor Manuel. And if we look at taxpayers' contribution to government revenue, that came down from some 40% when he started to under 30% when he ended. And many are saying that what Manuel giveth, Gordon is going to take away. Do you think that this is going to be the theme for 2010?
Well, I think the theme is going to be more on the expenditure side and the expenditure control, but presumably we're going to come back to that a bit later on. But yeah, I think in this particular budget, he's really got no latitude to give much back to the individual taxpayer. And it's probably all going to be about adjusting income tax thresholds for the lower middle income class earners rather than higher income earners. But there's unlikely, in my view, to be much change to the marginal tax rates.
Do you believe that we could see the marginal tax rate for high income earners, that 40% upwards of those levels, perhaps 42, perhaps even 45 has been touted? Kyle?
No, I don't think that's likely. Over the last few years, there has been a real trend to reduce individual taxes insofar as possible, give real tax relief and so on. So that, to increase the marginal tax rate now would just be a reversal of that, and I don't think it would be politically feasible to do that at this point in time. I think what you might see is rather than tax increases, you might just see no or little relief being given for fiscal drag in that regard, and in effect clawing something back in that regard.
Wouldn't the top marginal tax rate be the only avenue available to the minister to impact that budget deficit, which we're expecting a significant number on that front?
Absolutely not. I think that there's many avenues, and I think the most important avenue would be on the expenditure side of the budget, as Dennis mentioned earlier.
We're coming back to expenditure, but this is on the revenue collection.
Sure,
if you wanted to boost your coffers, and you were the Minister of Finance, and you looked at that upper end of the income potential in South Africa, would you?
I personally wouldn't want to touch marginal tax rates. I think South Africa already has a very high marginal tax rate compared to its global peers. If anything, I would be looking for marginal tax rates to come down over the coming years. I think I would rather that the Treasury and SARS focused on broadening the tax net and getting more efficient in their collection as much as possible. But I really don't think we can have this discussion without talking about spending on the expenditure side.
Well, let's move to spending then. Russell's taken us on to the next topic. David, what are you expecting to see? Obviously, efficiencies in government would be a good starting point, particularly at the national government level, provincial, and then filtering right through to local government.
Well, you said it. I think it's a matter of actually being able to implement that. And in order to implement that, it's a major policy shift in order to get divisions more effective and more efficient. I'm just looking at Kyle now, and Kyle will know what I'm talking about. But a couple of weeks ago, we had the audit report that came out from the Auditor General, and it just showed you, I think, 1 in every 3 government departments keeps proper books and records. So there is a massive latitude to actually reduce costs or make the expenditure that we do a lot more efficient. So I think that's going to be the theme.
Can we put numbers to that massive latitude on the expenditure front, especially if we're extracting efficiencies? You guys must have bandied some numbers around the table. Anyone going to offer me something here?
Well, look, I mean, it's very difficult.
There was a hospital pass directly to you. I'm not sure.
No, if you think last year, spending probably went up by about 19%. Now, some of that was due to the recession, but the really big dent on the expenditure side came through the inordinately high wage increases for public service. So the remuneration bill actually rose by around about 15.4%. So, you can't talk fiscal discipline if you're actually giving away those sort of wage increases. So, and that's 30% of the budget. So unless he addresses that and comes down very firmly that they are not going to actually budge on very high wage increases, then quite honestly, we're not going to bring expenditure under control. Efficiencies in other areas must be made, but that is obviously the big lump that has to actually be addressed.
We've factored in from the medium-term budget policy framework 15% annual increase over the next 3 years where expenditure is concerned. Now, what is the real impact of that, given the inflation rate?
Well, I don't think that's right.
Is that not?
No,
okay.
no.
Well, you can come back. You can come back at me if you don't trust my numbers.
No, I think the medium-term budget expenditure framework allows for a 1% increase in real terms.
But that's exactly
in non-interest expenditure.
In non-interest expenditure.
Yeah. So you're looking at about 8% per annum over the next 3 years. Now, bear in mind we're coming from an environment where we had 14, 15, and last year sort of 19% increases. So that's the big change in mindset that has to take place in this budget. Otherwise, we're on the route to a very, very large government deficit debt.
Well, let's look at the fiscal deficit and expectations on that front. We've got anything from 9% of GDP to 6% of GDP. The range is significant. What are your impressions here, Russell?
Yeah, look, I don't think we're going to see big surprises from the mini budget, which was 5 or 6 months ago. Yeah, if anything, probably might just see some improvements on that. But if we get an annual deficit for the 09-10 fiscal year of around 7.8%, 7.6, 7.8%, I wouldn't be at all surprised. These are big. That's a big deficit. That's a really big deficit. Considering that in normal times a large deficit is around 3% of GDP. Yes, it's kind of in line with what's happening globally, but it's big stuff. And my concern is that we're just very quickly whittling away at the fiscal space that was created, and possibly too quickly.
David, I can see you.
That's the big worry. And I come from a market point of view. I certainly haven't got all the numbers at my fingertips, and I look what this is likely to do to the market. What's the market looking for? What do we look for in the stock market or and the big concern is not now. The big concern with the budget deficit is what happens next year. And we always try and guess what revenue receipts are going to be like by looking at corporate results as they come through. And unfortunately, as on our program last night, we were talking about ABSA, it seems that the recovery is going to be stretched. And we might be a little too optimistic in terms of where our revenue is going to be this year. And I think that my concerns are where the budget deficit will be next year, not where it is now.
Yeah.
I still want your comments, Russell, on the expenditure front, because you were pretty strong about what you want to see, and I'm sure you've got a list that you're going to take us through that we can tick off when we see that speech coming through this afternoon.
Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not someone who goes through line item by line item through the budget. I view it from a macro perspective in the sense that any organization in any downturn, when revenues are under pressure, cuts costs, cuts spending. And people talk about, well, we've already got so many job losses in the economy. You certainly can't touch employment. So where do you do it, and how do you do it? And I'm not a technocrat in that sense of going through this with a fine-tooth comb, but we need some major cost cutting. And if you look at there was a small team that was put together. Pravin Gordon led it, and this team at the mini budget put out a document, and they looked at how they were going to cut costs, and they came up with about 15 billion rand over 3 years. That wouldn't register on. It wouldn't even register on the scale. So if we want to really get serious about cost cutting as a government, there's got to be some drastic measures, and unfortunately, it might have to include cutting jobs in government. But government isn't exempt from the rules of economics, like business is as well, and business has been cutting jobs. So government needs to find these savings from somewhere.
Well, have a look what's happening in Greece now as they try and address their budget deficit. So it gives you some kind of idea what the political backlash can be when you actually start to try and address a deficit.